Revelations continue to emerge from the NSA files exposed by whistleblower Edward Snowden. The Guardian of London reports that in 2009, the British government conducted extensive surveillance on foreign diplomats who attended the G20 summit in London. Britain's NSA counterpart, the GCHQ, even established fake internet cafes to spy on the foreign delegates' computer use. The agency also hacked into officials' BlackBerries to monitor their emails and phone calls. The NSA played a key role in the operation by sharing information on the phone calls of Russian leader Medvedev. Other targets included British government allies such as South Africa and Turkey. The goal of the spying appears to have been to give the British government an advantage in the negotiations. Meanwhile, over the weekend, U.S. intelligence agencies officially confirmed the surveillance programs exposed by Edward Snowden. In a letter to Congress released on Saturday, U.S. officials said the blanket collection of phone records and the spying on foreigners' internet usage are covered under Section 215 of the USA Patriot Act and Section 702 of the FISA Amendments Act. The National Security Agency also said it investigated less than 300 phone records seized in the broad collection of metadata last year. The NSA also claims the monitoring has foiled terror plots in the U.S. and 20 other countries, but has not provided any details. Well, as Edward Snowden is believed to remain in Hong Kong as he faces an ongoing U.S. investigation, hundreds of protesters braved heavy rain on Saturday in a show of support. Hong Kong legislator Claudia Mo spoke at the rally.
So Snowden actually said the courts in Hong Kong and the local people will decide his fate. And we as Hong Kong people owe him at least some response. What he was doing was trying to tell the world that we do have this big brother of United States of America.
Yes.
It's supposed to be the champion of democracy worldwide. Supposedly. But then it's been conducting blanket surveillance in a cyberspace on a global scale. Thanks to the Washington, Hong Kong is part of that surveillance program, except we only got hundreds, apparently, out of tens of thousands of hackings and so on. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Snowden is trying to tell us that Big Brother government must draw a line. It's a war of security versus freedom. It's a war of security versus privacy.
For more, we go to Hong Kong, where we're joined by Charles Mack, another legislative counselor who participated in the rally. He represents the Information Technology Functional Constituency of Hong Kong, also the honorary president of the Hong Kong Information Technology Federation, and former chair of the Hong Kong Internet Service Providers Association, as well as co-founder of the Internet Society Hong Kong. Also in Hong Kong, we're joined by Tom Grundy, an activist and blogger who organized Saturday's rally. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Let's go first to Tom. Why the rally?
Well, Snowden, as you heard from Claudia Mo, specifically came to Hong Kong as he believed there is a tradition of freedom of speech and political dissent, which is largely true here. We had over 900 people, according to an independent head count, 6 speakers, including 3 serving politicians, and 27 groups, which is unprecedented for Hong Kong, especially in the rain. We proceeded to the US consulate, where we all blew whistles. We handed in a letter to the ambassador demanding that the US end surveillance on innocent citizens. And we said, of course, that the US citizens may be protected by the 4th Amendment, but the 12th article of the UN Human Rights Declaration, protects the rest of us. We then went to the Hong Kong government headquarters, where we handed in a letter demanding that the government here protects Snowden, upholds the rule of law, and rejects any mainland influence on the issue.
Charles Mack, can you explain why you are supporting Edward Snowden, what it means to be the information technology representative on in the Hong Kong Council? What he has done is significant to you?
Okay. Well, first of all, in the legislature of Hong Kong, which is the lawmaking body in Hong Kong, we do have a system that other than the geographically returned people and legislators, there are also a number of us that are returned by individual professions or industry bodies. So I represent the IT, information technology functional constituency. Now, I think the fact that Snowden that he chose Hong Kong, according to what he's told The Guardian and the South China Morning Post, was that Hong Kong do have a tradition for freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and tolerance of dissent, and also a rule of law. So it is this kind of spotlight that we have right now because of this affair that he's in Hong Kong, and he's been talking to journalists and so on, and still hiding. That we think, and a lot of people in Hong Kong are actually believe that he got to get his due process. He got to get his due process, all the rights that he is accorded according to Hong Kong laws. I think the Morning Post just did a survey over the weekend of a number of people in Hong Kong, and actually more than half do believe that he should be protected by our Hong Kong law as much as possible, according to our system and all the due process that he should be getting.
Ed Snowden did a interview with the South China Morning Post, and in it he said one target of the NSA hacking was the Chinese University of Hong Kong, which, according to the New York Times, hosts the city's main hub for internet connections to the rest of the world. Can you talk about the significance of this?
Yes, actually the Chinese university hosts what is called the Hong Kong Internet Exchange, which actually is not exactly the hub to the rest of the world, but the hub within Hong Kong. So all of the intra-Hong Kong traffic between different internet service providers will pass through this HKIX Internet Exchange in the Chinese university. So in a way, you would guess that if somebody want to snoop and want to listen in as much traffic as possible, then you would choose the biggest intersection point, and that would be the HKIX. So I think that is what conventional wisdom here has been sort of guessing why that particular place, that university in particular, has been picked up as a target. But of course, I think in Snowden's interview, he also revealed that all over the world, there were at least over 60,000 of these sort of intrusions, and there were about 300 or so in Hong Kong. So that actually means that Hong Kong is not the only target. But by being in Hong Kong and talking to a Hong Kong newspaper, I guess he must have particularly chose to highlight the situation in Hong Kong, the attacks that has been targeting here.
The New York Times goes on to point out that the Global Times, a nationalistic mainland Chinese newspaper under direct control of the Communist Party, published an editorial Friday calling for China to glean as much information as possible from Snowden, saying Snowden's a card that China never expected, but China's neither adept at nor used to playing it, and goes on to say the commentary also called for China and Hong Kong to treat Snowden kindly enough so that others with national security secrets will not be discouraged from fleeing to Hong Kong. They said China should make sure Hong Kong is not the last place where other Snowdens want to go. Charles Mack, talk about what the Global Times is saying.
Well, I think they made it pretty blatant what is in China's mind about Snowden being in Hong Kong, is that they want to play the card. They might want to get as much information out of this person as possible. Please understand that at least we have a one country, two system in Hong Kong and between Hong Kong and the mainland. So our laws is different, are different from the laws in China. And we do have a border and so on. We do have different governments. Even though as a regional government, we do report to the central government. So I think what we want locally is to make sure that we can protect and make sure that we can live up to our core values and make sure that we treat this person according to all the rights that he should be getting under Hong Kong law. And this is exactly what I don't want to see, is that this sort of political influence to be interfering into the political into the justice process, that judicial process that Mr. Snowden may end up having to get in Hong Kong. If, for example, the U.S. starts by contacting the Hong Kong government to try to initiate an extradition, and if Mr. Snowden decides to try to get asylum or apply for refugee status here in Hong Kong, if he chose to do that, if the process comes to that point, he should be getting all the rights.
And what would political asylum mean? I mean, if he were arrested, he would be arrested by Hong Kong police. But this is a complicated story because he could be charged more for revealing information to Hong Kong and China. But then the question would be, would China be willing to then hand him over?
Okay, the process roughly, as I understand, worked like this. If the U.S. started initiate a process and say that we want to arrest this person and start an extradition process, then Mr. Snowden could apply in Hong Kong for refugee status, and then there will be at least two tests. First, by the United Nations High Commission on Refugees to determine whether or not, for example, that he will face torture at home, and whether or not this is political persecution, and so on. And second, also by the Hong Kong court. So the Hong Kong court, and he will be accorded rights to appeal all the way up to our highest court in Hong Kong. So assuming that money and financial issues, because you do need to get lawyers and so on for that, assuming those are not an issue, these processes in the past could have taken quite a bit of time. But of course, the issue is, at the end, if there is a decision that finally has to be made, if he isn't successful, and there has to be a final decision to be made about the extradition, our chief executive in Hong Kong, which is pretty much our president, just like, he will have to make the final decision. But because this case very likely will involve foreign relations, then he has to consult the central government. So in the end, it means that the process can be a pretty prolonged process. And second, Beijing will probably come into the equation to make a final decision in the end.
Tom Grundy, do you think that Edward Snowden was correct in saying that he saw Hong Kong as a place of freedom of the press and freedom of expression?
Well, a lot of the pro-democracy groups which turned out on Saturday have been concerned that there's been a slow erosion of civil liberties in Hong Kong, and particularly in the last year or so, you've seen a lot of suspicion of the mainland and some large protests, including last year against a government program of national education, which many saw as brainwashing. So a lot of these things seem to feed into the turnout on Saturday. But he said he's entrusting the Hong Kong people and the courts here. So, you know, I hope we don't let him down. In 2004, Hong Kong extradited a Libyan dissident, according to Law Yuk Kai, who is the Human Rights Monitor director here. He went on to be tortured, and he received millions of pounds in compensation from the UK government. It was also at the request of the US that he was deported, and he's now suing the Hong Kong government. So one of the reasons we gathered on Saturday is that we don't want Snowden to, you know, end up like Bradley Manning, and we want the rule of law locally to be upheld.
Charles Mack, the issue of cyber warfare, what are China's concerns with cyber warfare? And what did you, as an internet specialist, as an expert, what did you find most significant in the information that was released by Edward Snowden?
Well, I guess cyber warfare is already part of not just espionage, but just or even what all these countries are doing. And you see all these examples recently, like North Korea getting into South Korea system and so on. So it's a part of very big part of foreign relations and even future warfare. You've seen that actually with the discussion only a couple of weeks ago between President Obama and China President Xi in California, what was the first issue that they discussed. It was actually cyber spying. But at the time, originally, the U.S. was trying to press China to say that, hey, don't do that against us. There's been a lot of cases of Chinese originated attacks on U.S. companies and U.S. official targets and so on. So stop doing that. And now with this disclosure, China all of a sudden feels that it has been vindicated because it's been saying all along that, hey, we're the victims. So I think what is most unfortunate about this matter is that governments are, it's like they cannot stop themselves putting their hands into the cookie jars, which is to look into all of our lives. And it's the same for all these governments, just like what was just disclosed by the Guardians today about the UK government. So there are just lots and lots more that we people of the world don't know. And so I think the unfortunate thing is that people of the world actually are the losers, because right now what I fear the most is that authoritative governments, including China itself, may come out and say that, hey, even the U.S. is doing this, so don't tell us what to do, because we'll just be doing the same as what you are doing. And of course there's a difference here, because in the U.S. we're mainly talking about these sort of surveillance that the Americans originally thought are not targeting themselves, the Americans, but now they found that it's actually even targeting domestic targets. But wow, if we're talking about China, which is the place in the world with the heaviest internet censorship, all these efforts, most of their efforts are actually targeting their own citizens. So that there is this sort of difference as well.
It's interesting that this all happened as the Chinese and U.S. leaders were meeting in California, Xi and Obama. Charles Mack.
Yes. Yes, this is exactly such a coincidence, which is why I have to say that it's understandable, even though I don't think we have any proof that certain American politicians might be coming out to suspect Snowden of having been influenced by China or being used by China. I hope that's not true. That's why even when I was in the rally outside of the U.S. consulate, I did say that I hope that Mr. Snowden would not go into the mainland of China, because if he trusts in Hong Kong with our one country or two system, we will try to do whatever we can to try to protect him and give him the rights under our laws. But if he ends up in China, which is the place with the heaviest internet censorship in the world, it just goes against everything that he says. So I hope that's not going to happen.
What power do you have as a legislator in the Hong Kong Council, finally, Charles Mack?
Well, we don't have a lot of power, particularly, as I said, the whole process in the end. And if both sides feels that it has to, both sides meaning Hong Kong and China feels that our governments feel that if it does involve foreign policy matters, then by law we have to consult the central government in Beijing. So by that time, when it reaches that point, then there will definitely be a lot of political consideration. But first of all, even before we reach that point, I believe Mr. Snowden should be given his due process in our court, first of all. And second, in the end, by the time when this is really treated as a foreign policy matter and we have to consult Beijing, I'm sure that possibly, like it or not, diplomacy between the U.S. and China will kick in to make the final decision.
I want to thank you both for being with us. Charles Mack, City Council member, a member of Hong Kong's Legislative Council, former president of Hong Kong Information Technology Federation, and also honorary president of the Hong Kong Information Technology Federation. Also, Tom Grundy, thanks so much for being with us, Hong Kong-based activist and blogger who organized Saturday's rally in defense of Edward Snowden. As we turn